Feedback is one of the most powerful weapons in your arsenal when it comes to improving as a musician. But do you know how to use it properly? Most people either fail to use it to its full potential, or they may even find that it holds them back if it triggers negative emotions. In this video, I'll show you how to use feedback to stay motivated and confident and keep moving forward quickly, rather than have it leaving you feeling frustrated and deflated. And the first thing you need to do is to actually get feedback. So if you haven't seen it already, then check out my video on that here. But once you've got feedback, you then have to decide what you're going to do with it. Because it isn't the case that you actually have to accept all the feedback that you get. So there's two questions to ask yourself. And the first one is it true? Because sometimes the people giving you feedback will get things wrong. So it's perfectly valid to just query that. And you don't want to be overly defensive or deluded about this, but you do just want to check in that it actually makes sense. And some of this is going to be a gut feeling. Do you recognize stuff that's going on there? And some of it is going to be down to, well, how much do you trust the person or the source that's giving you feedback? Because these things are going to exist on a continuum. If you imagine at one end, someone who's been listening to you, who's not a musician, doesn't really know anything about this all, they give you some feedback, you might not put a huge amount of weight behind that if it doesn't line up with what you think's going on. Whereas if you've got a teacher who you really trust their opinion and their experience, and they tell you something that doesn't match with how you think things are, well, you're going to give a whole lot more weight to their opinion. And of course, if you're using a recording for feedback, well, there's interpretation there, but the actual, what you hear, what is there on the recording, that is sound, that's not going to lie to you. So that, in a way, is kind of, it's fixed. So that's the first thing that you need to do is, do I accept it as true? And the trick here is to try and take the emotions out of it. It's not about, does this feel good or bad? It's, can I see that there is truth in it, whatever's going on here. Once you've got that, there's a further question to ask, because the question is, if it's true, do I actually want to do anything with this feedback? Because at any one time, there are a million different things that you could be working on, but that doesn't mean that they all have equal priority. So if you've got feedback from someone, oh, I really think you need to work on your tone, whatever it is. It may be that actually this is something that's really important to you, in which case take that feedback and let's get on with it. But it may be they're totally correct. Your tone could be a lot better, but the other issues are much higher priority for you. So you'd accept the feedback as true in that case, but you might not choose to do anything with it because there are other things that are higher up the list. And I've got an article on my website about the importance of having clear goals in music and using these. And you might find that helpful. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. And I'd also love to know if this is an issue for you. Do you let whatever feedback comes in distract you from more important goals sometimes? If so, just let me know in the comments below. Okay, so now you've got some feedback that you actually want to act on, and you need to turn it into practical exercises that are going to make you progress. So how do we do that? Well, here's a really simple 3-step process that you can use. And the first step is to identify the specific process that is causing the unwanted outcome that is there at the moment. So getting really clear on what it is this feedback means you actually need to work on. To give you an example, let's imagine you've got feedback that your rhythm isn't good, you're not playing well in time. So the most obvious explanation for this might be that actually you're just not very good at putting notes at the exact point in time where you want to. However, it might not be that. It might be that you're totally capable of that, but when you're playing in a group, you're just not really listening well enough to the other musicians. And so you're not aware of where that exact point in time that you want to put the notes is. So you can see that in this case, same feedback, there might be more than one explanation for what the underlying issue that you need to work on is. And even actually, if there is only one thing, it's really helpful to get clear on what is the real root cause, what is the thing that you can work on that will make the difference. Because sometimes you can just head off with a vague idea of what you're working on and start sorting that out, and it's not always the best choice. So that's the first thing. Get really clear on what you can change that will improve things so that you've addressed the feedback. And the second thing is, once you know what it is that you want to change, what is an exercise that you can do that will make a definite improvement in that area? Now, there may be more than one, and it helps to pick the best one if you can, but don't get overly hung up on this, because it's much more important to pick one thing that you think is going to make a definite difference than to spend ages trying to pick the best one out of a whole lot. So again, if we're talking about rhythm and we've thought that actually our issue is not being able to put the notes in exactly the right place, we might work on clapping along to a metronome, clapping along to a rhythm, to just improve our ability to hear exactly where we're going to put notes and to put them there. And the third step in the process is to define what success is going to look like. Because a lot of people will stop after the second step. Well, in fact, they might have skipped the first step, just only done the second step. And that's great, you've got something to work on now, but we don't want to work on this forever. We want to know when to stop so that we've made some significant progress. We can go back, check, get more feedback again and see, is that still the thing that needs the most work, or is it time to move on to something else? And in order to do this, you want some way of measuring when you've made a significant step forward. So for example, in the example with rhythm again, if we're clapping along to a metronome, a great thing to do with that is to judge how well you're doing by making the metronome click disappear. You can do it with playing as well. If you put that clap in exactly the right point, it's as though the metronome click, you just can't hear it because the sounds completely overlap. So a great judgment on that might be, and you would go completely different ways with this depending on where your rhythm is. Let's say, I'm going to say, I've succeeded in this once I can make the click disappear 3 times in a row. And I can do that, reasonably consistently. So what's going on there is we've got a definite point where I can say, okay, I've done enough of this practice for now. I've clearly made some steps forward. Let's go back and reassess the situation. And there is another option for working on feedback, that is to specifically pick new music to work on that is going to address that feedback. So I think these steps, the 3-step practice approach and the working on new music, are going to suit slightly different examples. So if there's something that you just can't do, then picking that practice approach and that 3 steps and measuring what's going on is probably going to be the best way to address that feedback. If it's something that you're capable of doing, but it's just not coming out in your playing, perhaps you have the ability to vary your dynamics really well, but you just don't do it when you play. In that case, that might be a great one for picking a particular piece to work on that has a lot of dynamic variation in it, and learning that as a way to get this thing that's already there within you, perhaps coming out in your playing more. So there you go, a simple framework you can use when you get feedback. Do I want to act on it? How will I act on it? And how will I know when I've made progress? So I hope you enjoy applying that. And if you'd like to know more about how to pick the ideal topics for your practice routine, then check out my video on that next. And if you want the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Mark Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Please click below to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and while you're down there, why not hit the share button to pass this on to other musicians? Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.